latest election, the first since martial law was lifted, was boycotted by a vast majority of Marcos' opposition. And the man who's been a chief leader of the opposition and had a good chance at the presidency until martial law was declared in 1972 is with us here today on the 700 Club. He's a former senator and now a fellow at the Harvard Center for International Affairs here in the United States after leaving prison in the Philippines. Will you please welcome to the 700 Club, Mr. NINOY AQUINO. Senator, I'm delighted to have you with me. Prior to 72, there was some chaos in the Philippines, wasn't there? Or is that a...
Yes, there was a chaos in my country in 72, and the students were demonstrating. There were too many guns in the street, and Mr. Marcos used this as an excuse to declare martial law to restore peace and order.
Well, now, you ran as the candidacy for the presidency.
No, the presidential election was coming in 73.
73,
yes.
Okay.
You see, Mr. Marcos was elected in 65, and under the Philippine Constitution, our president cannot go beyond 8 years, and therefore he had to step out in 1973. Unfortunately, he declared martial law, and the Constitution was suspended, and he's been in power since then.
You were the leader of the opposition. Did you ever run for anything against him?
No, I am only one of the leaders of the opposition, Pat, and there are many leaders in my country. I ran for the Senate, and I was a member of the minority party in the Senate. I was to seek the presidential nomination in 73. However, that was aborted, and we never got to that stage.
So you were unable to do what you were planning to do. There's some good things. There's obviously, or at least there seems to be religious freedom in the Philippines.
Oh, yes. That is one of the greatest things. In fact, your program is one of the most popular programs in my country. You know, when I was in prison for 7 years and 7 months in solitary confinement, one of the great bonuses I have is this little television that they gave me. And at 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, your program came in strong every day. And Channel 7, which is a small station in Manila, but throws the best signal. It has one of the best programming for day. You have a pre-program on 12 o'clock slot, the student canteen, and then the 3 o'clock, the 700 Club comes in, and that kept me company in my solitary cell.
7 and 8, well, not 7, but for many
years.
I
think we came in about 76, 77 in Manila.
That's right.
And so I was listening to this, and every time you would have a testimony, I would feel sort of a affiliation to it, because I also felt the same thing about the good Lord.
Why were you imprisoned and put in solitary confinement?
Well, the charge against me was subversion. Mr. Marcos accused me of trying to overthrow the government. Of course, I tried to overthrow him through the ballot, through a legal way. But he charged me with subversion and illegal possession.
That's like the Republicans putting the Democratic contender into prison for trying to overthrow them and vice versa, each election.
That would be an analogy, yes.
You were trying through the ballot box to win the presidency.
He accused me of trying to talk to all of the subversives in the country. And I told him I was a center of the Republic, and I had to talk to every Filipino, whether they're subversive or not. I mean, I had to interview them, I had to talk to them and find out what's wrong with the country. And he accused me of fraternizing with all of these people.
Well, was this in court? Did you go to trial?
Yes, he brought me before a military tribunal. I refused to defend myself because I'm a civilian. All the civil courts are open and functioning. And the Supreme Court says that the judicial authority of our country, I mean, the Constitution said all judicial authorities with the Supreme Court. So why should I, a civilian, stand trial before a military tribunal created by Mr. Marcos under his command and under his discretion? So I simply refused. After 5 years of refusal, they decided to sentence me to death by firing squad.
You're here.
Yes, and the Supreme Court stopped it. And then in 1980, I suffered a heart attack in prison. And for 40 days, the military doctors were saying that it was a mere muscle spasm. Then on May 5, 1980, I was brought to the Philippine Heart Center. And the civilian doctors at the Heart Center said I was suffering from progressive angina, and I had to undergo a triple bypass. Otherwise, I won't survive. Well, I refused to have my operation in the Philippines, and I insisted that I must be allowed to go to Dallas, Texas. There was a big discussion. Then one day, on May 8th, to be exact, Mrs. Marcos came to my room, and we talked for an hour, and then she said, "Would you want to go to America?" I said, "Yes, Mrs. Marcos." I said, "There's a plane leaving at 6 o'clock. You can leave for America." So I say, praise the Lord, this is the great miracle.
Well, it is. Well, now, wait a minute. You have been arrested for subversion against Marcos.
Yes.
You have been tried by a military court. They want to put you to a firing squad.
Yes.
And now you're in the Philippine Heart Center, which is one of
Yes.
Mrs.
One of
Marcos'
Mrs. Marcos'
projects. And we donated some money to it a few years ago, as a matter of fact, here at the 700 Club. And she says, would you like to go? You can leave at 6 o'clock tonight. And that, just like that?
Just like that. So if you don't believe in God, then I tell you, there must be somebody up there.
And so here you are, healthy and vigorous.
Yes,
and
I arrived in Dallas, Texas, and the doctors confirmed all of the diagnoses in the Philippines. They told me, you must go under the knife. And I said, all right, if that's the decision, operate on me. So they opened my chest and they gave me this triple bypass. Now, some doctors said that I developed this angina when I went on a hunger fast in 1975. I fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and I lost about 60 pounds. And that apparently started the whole process of my cardiac deterioration.
But you're perfectly healthy now.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, now, are you going to stay in the United States, or are you going back?
No, I'd like to go back to my country because that's where my people are, and they're suffering, and therefore I must join them.
Tell me about your relationship with the Lord in this solitary thing. Something unusual happened spiritually to you.
Well, you know, I'm a Catholic. I was born a Catholic, and 85% of the Filipino people are Christians, as you know that. But we never really read the Bible as Catholics. I don't know why. And we were instinctively Catholic. We believed in God. But as a young man, I had no time for God. I was too busy with my politics. I was moving on, and I thought I was self-contained. I thought, you know, on my own steam, I can make it. I only went to God when I needed His help, when the votes were coming in, and I'd say, dear Lord, help me. But when the votes are in, I forget the Lord. But when I was placed in deep solitary confinement, nobody to talk to, I became desperate. And here I started to question the fundamentals of my belief. Firstly, is there really a God? I began to doubt that. I said, if there is a God, why should I be here? What have I done? Why are the crooks all out? And so I asked the second question, was there a God when the children were gassed at Auschwitz, at Buchenwald, at Dachau? Where was He? Where is this God? And people are dying in the Sahel. And that was the doubt that assailed my mind. But then I felt there must be a God, because then all of this suffering will be useless. I mean, if I'm suffering like this and there's no God, who will ever reward me? Who will ever pay me back? So there must be a God. So I felt then, maybe it's a false consolation, I had to even invent Him if there is no God, because that's the only way you can survive. Without Him, Pat, you'll never make it. And as St. Paul said, I'm strongest when I was weakest. And I became strongest when I was down there on the floor, in solitary confinement, alone. And it's only when He came to me that I really felt strongest. And therefore now, I have survived all of my vicissitudes because I know that there's this God interceding for us.
I understand that you had Thomas Kempis'
Yes,
Imitation
I had
of
the
Christ.
Imitation of Christ, but the book that really encouraged me to go into deeper thinking is Chuck Colson's Born Again.
Oh, yes.
You know, I read this book and I said, oh, this guy is just a phony, you know, it's a gimmick. He was a Nixon man and he wants to use this, you know, to win the good graces of people. And I read this, but the more I read it, and I saw it there, he said, if you sit down with a yellow paper and write down your blessings as against your heartaches and frustrations, you will always know that you're always ahead. But the tragedy with us human beings, we only remember God on the negative way. Yes. We know Him when we're suffering. But what about the daily gifts that He gives us? The family, the children, the food, employment. We don't count that. So it was Chuck Colson who opened up my mind to this. And then I saw him in your program. So I started reading. So one day I was flying from Boston to Washington. And here's this man sitting down beside me in the plane. And I looked over and I said, excuse me, are you Mr. Colson? He said, yes. How did you know me? I said, I saw you in 700 Club and I read your book. And your book helped me. And we started talking, you see. And it was this man who showed me the way, and I told him I must apologize. I said, because, you know, when I first read your book, I thought you were a phony and you're a gimmick. But now that you're in your prison fellowship, really dedicating yourself to the Lord, I said, that's the greatest thing. And you know, I said, Chuck, I want to make a confession too. God gave me a gift, I said, a gift to articulate that brought me to the pinnacle of political power. I promised him in prison, I said, that if and when I regain my freedom, I'd like to use this gift now to witness for Him. And look, I'm here, Pat. I mean, a year ago, who would ever believe that I would be sitting down with you? I was watching you. I was in solitary confinement and the death sentence. Now I'm here with you. And this is a miracle. I mean, it's one of those things.
And the suffering did something, though. The suffering opened your understanding of God that you never would have had otherwise.
Well, Pat, suffering can do two ways. It can break you or make you.
All right.
In my particular instance, I welcomed it as an opportunity. With this suffering, I knew that God cared for me. Because if He didn't care for me, He won't make me suffer. But I knew that when He gave me this suffering in solitary confinement, away from my children, they would come in the afternoon and visit me once a week. And when they left, my heart would be broken. But it's only then that I really realized the value of my children. God had to take them away for me to realize that value. So I think the message is, welcome your suffering, because God will never give you a suffering that will break you. It's only a manifestation of His love, I think, that He makes us suffer to really realize Him. Because when we are in glory, we don't know Him. But when we suffer, we remember Him. So I